Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to day one of the Digital Ecosystem Week in conjunction with the Malaysia Tech Month 2021. Allow me to welcome all of you to this next session of the day entitled Digital Adoption in the Health Industry, Avant Garde or Late to the Party. For this session, join me in welcoming the CEO of MDEC, Surina, Shukri, in a conversation with Engineer Syahrunizam Samsudin, the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of UEM Edgenta, Berhad, Malaysia. Over to you, Surina.
Thank you, Hasrul. Good morning, or rather good afternoon, everybody. I am so excited to be here at Malaysia Tech Month. This is week 2, it's actually week 3, Digital Ecosystem Week. And I'm super excited to be leading this fireside chat along with Syahrunizam from UEM Edgenta, somebody that I actually really admire in terms of some of the things that he's trying to do in that space. So before I kick it off, let me just quickly set the context and the stage here. So this week, Malaysia Tech Month, really, we're focusing on the adoption story. So what is it that companies are doing? We're seeing tech all around. And of course, these days, we're all quite familiar. Every industry has the tech name behind it. FinTech, EduTech, and then of course, there's healthcare, health tech as well. And so some might say, as we think about adoption, some industries have seen adoption occur really fast. Some industries, you might argue, is a little bit slower. So today we're going to talk about some of those themes, especially as it relates to corporates going through the whole adoption story. I'm a big believer that corporate innovation is something that is required. I'm super excited to see it happening all around, and we're going to get a first-hand view in terms of what that is like. And what's top of mind for UEM Edgenta. So for those of you that are not familiar, you may have heard of the Edgenta name. Edgenta is a large primarily focuses on infrastructure and services, and UEM Edgenta specifically focuses on healthcare. And Syahrunizam has been at the helm for a little over a year now, and so with that, maybe I'm going to pass it over to Nizam to welcome him, and maybe I'll just kick it off, Nizam, with just tell us a little bit about what is Edgenta. What do you do? What is this company? Help us better understand.
Thanks, Surina. Thanks, MDEC, for inviting me here. This is a great initiative with the Tech Month. Edgenta is a company that involves itself in infrastructure management and maintenance. We maintain highways, we maintain bridges, we do a lot of engineering and project work. We also maintain and operate a number of hospitals on behalf of the government, both Malaysia, Singapore, Taiwan, and also in India. And also we manage private hospitals, and that cuts across the same countries as well. So all in all, we have more than 20,000 employees working through different parts of infrastructure management, helping our clients maintain these assets, helping our clients getting them available at 100% of the time, and making sure we deliver the best services across those segments. And of course, I was a COVID appointment, Surina, but it's been a year now. I was, it was interesting because I've never been interviewed and appointed online. And then we met a couple of times, and after which everybody was working from home. So yeah, so I think from an Edgenta standpoint, we, I guess, personify some of the conventional businesses that are listed on Bursa that's owned by Khazanah. And certainly we are not spared in terms of having to disrupt as well as to transform the organization, not just because of COVID, but certainly in light of all the relevant factors globally that pushes our industry closer and closer to digital transformation.
So Nizam, you and I first met probably, I think it might have been 2019. We were both at a tech conference talking about cloud. And so I've always looked to you as one of the figures in the corporate scene, as people that really understand technology, very, very interested in it. And of course, followed along closely what you've done with Touch and Go, really building up the fintech aspect of it. And so first and foremost, before we get into Edgenta specifically, your views as putting on a technologist hat. So where do you think we are, big picture speaking, as far as like the adoption story is in Malaysia?
Okay, maybe I'll look at it from adapting and adoption, because I think, in the last 18 months, I think adaptation is as important as adoption, because what has happened is that COVID has localized a lot of our reactions and our, I guess, countermeasures in terms of how we want to deal with it, both healthcare and technology. But I think if you look at adaptation, I think Malaysians have adapted very, very well in relation to new technology and what it has to offer, and particularly the richness in data that allows them to look at. And I think over the last 18 months, and particularly for the millennial generation and those below maybe 35, I would say that we were probably anywhere between 8 to 8.5 over 10 in terms of adapting to all the information that we have. Now, you have to remember the first 18 months, the adaptation is driven by a lot of government narrative in terms of how they want to deal with stuff. Now, what's happened now is that government narrative is creating a certain demand, but now the demand is also responded by the consumers. So now you have narrative from the people saying, well, I need more data points, I need more information, I need a lot more technology to allow me to understand what's happening here. And in this short 18 months, right, you see a proliferation of not just apps, but just the ability for Malaysians to look into different areas that they never looked into before. So you got an increase in online trading for equities. You got an increase in understanding of cryptocurrencies and cryptocurrency exchanges. You've got an increase and heightened awareness in terms of mobile applications and cloud computing in terms of where you can access data. Right. And I think this is a great place for Malaysia at the moment for us to sort of tap into. Now, adoption is another story altogether, right? Because we always say, well, we've always been talking about great technology and we never really are able to execute as fast given whatever circumstances. So I think adoption, we're still about 5 over 10, and maybe we need to improve that a lot more vis-a-vis other countries if you take a big picture perspective. But the more important thing is, what do we adopt first, right? And this is where I think a private-public platform or consortium of discussion needs to take place, where you need to have views both from the government, private sector, and the consumers to basically drive the adoption. So if you only come from the tech companies, they only want to sell stuff that they think will be relevant versus what the consumers want at the moment. Like, for example, I'll take healthcare. Consumer wants accessible, affordable, understandable healthcare. They want to be able to understand what they're getting into and how to get access to that as cheaply as possible. But that may not be the end objective for tech companies in general, and government may want to ensure that they have the public infrastructure to deal with that. So everybody's got a different sort of skew in terms of what they want to do, and we need to figure out how to build that adoption platform. And I know Singapore, with their Health Hub initiative, which is basically expounded by the Health Board in Singapore, is already moving that direction by coming up with policy in terms of integrating offline and online, getting consumers to think through how to integrate everybody's interest into one particular discussion or narrative. And I think that's where we should be heading. China is already on the way in that respect. And I think a lot of countries will maybe evolve more transformationally in that direction.
Yeah. So Nizam, you've been in your role, you mentioned just now, even coming into role, it was a little bit different. Online interviews, online everything, right smack in the pandemic. So share with us a little bit. So as you think about what you're trying to do, what you're doing from here on, share a little bit around how you've deconstructed the strategy, and then what this Edgenta strategy is going forward. So lay this picture in terms of of what your plans are in terms of really taking Edgenta from here on? Because, you know, they say every company now is a tech company. And so how do you think about that?
Well, thanks for that, Surina. I think maybe I'll start with this as a starting point. I think Edgenta is a listed company with the business it has and the contracts it has. I think without real technology supporting it, it won't be able to evolve into a better company in the future. So it's got to where it is based on conventional thinking and great management input. But I think to go to the future, they need something else. So when I took my interview, and I'll share this with you, it's interesting because I became an analyst again because I can't interact with the board freely in an open discussion. So I became an analyst when I first started my career in Petronas. I was just crunching a lot of data, right? And what I wanted to do was I wanted to look at what Edgenta of the future would look like in 2025. And I took a 5-year view and I thought, okay, this company is managing a very conventional business, is very people-centric. It has a culture that has already evolved over the last 20 years, right? Now, how would I bring a technology element into the organization without disrupting the quality of people, without disrupting some of the nuances that makes Edgenta a good company, right? And so the first thing I needed to do was to really break it down to not just the board and shareholders, but also to our own employees or the Edgenta stars, what technology meant to us, right? And you know, people were just afraid that I was gonna, you know, initially thought, oh, you know, this guy came from Touch and Go, is he gonna come up with a digital wallet for Edgenta? And you know, and I think the context first was we operate a lot of assets for our clients, and in that sense, we accumulated a lot of data. We had a lot of information about the assets we manage across hardware and software, across time periods, across OEMs and supporting supply chains. And so the first thing I wanted to do was to tell them, look, we need all this information secured on a cloud-based infrastructure so that one, we could actually have AI to help us think through a lot of these permutation and institutional knowledge a lot faster and responding to the requirements of the client a lot faster. But at the same time, we also wanted to make sure that our ongoing interaction with our clients would be in a secured environment where they can also share information with us. So the first part about it is that, look, we need to put all our data in one place. And that's what I sort of carved out Edgenta Cloud, which is part of our new Edgenta Next initiative. And the Edgenta Cloud then led to us coming out with a marketplace where we started populating all the software that we had developed for clients. And now we're scaling it up through software as a service to also invite other clients to be on board without necessarily having to deploy our people. So some of these assets already have people running it, but what they wanted was a technology input or institutional knowledge to help them run these assets better, looking at performance matrices, looking at energy performance contracting, for example, how I would reduce the cost of electricity consumption for old chillers and boilers, or even new ones in terms of how I would use my technology to optimize the use of electricity, both in hospitals and non-hospital environments. And so with the Edgenta marketplace, something amazing happened. I also included other startups and other tech companies to also help me augment the supply chain that we wanted to build for our new clients. And then at the end, we started thinking, look, we're doing all this work for a lot of clients. We're also purchasing a lot of materials, services, and items. And so we said, well, from here, we're going to actually optimize our procurement process and drive a lot more value within the organization. So as I talked about these three things, and then I built up a vision of Edgenta of the future, a lot of people in the organization started getting excited and they wanted to make sure that they were part of the journey. So one of the things that we did very aggressively through our HR and culture was to build our new value system, which is FIRST. It stands for future focus, imagining new ways, respect for others, solutioning mindset, and true to our word. This is our way of telling ourselves that if we're going to do something, we're going to do it properly. We're going to do it because we're a team. We're going to do it because we respect each other. We're going to make sure that we open our minds to new solutions, and we're going to help our clients and ourselves to improve over time. And this is really the platform that we're building a lot of our innovation, because it has to start from the people and culture. And everything else sort of falls into place, right? So that's the sort of the starting point of that whole journey. And it's been a year, and right now we've launched our product. The team is basically going through new challenges, which is exactly what we wanted. They're struggling, looking at some of the issues. How do we do this? How do we do that? And that's exactly where you want to be. So now we go from adaptation to adoption very, very quickly. And then we infuse different types of talent, and hopefully that process will be accelerated through further injection of ecosystem influences from people like MDEC or Magic, startup companies coming in and other tech companies participating in as well.
Yeah, it's great that you touch on the people component, the culture, and I see on your screen there first. So I think this is something that is permeating across the organization. The saying goes, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." You heard that one, right? And I've always maintained that digital transformation is human transformation, because it's really all about the people at the end of the day. Having said that, I'm just curious, because just to give a sense of the audience on some of the practical things as we're trying to drive innovation, let's talk for a second. We're in this era where we're all working from home, and it's very challenging to drive change when you're not necessarily all in the same room. You're meeting. There's so many things that needs to happen. And so and sounds like from what you've explained just now, it's this whole environment that's being curated, cultivated, where there's a lot of change happening. And so how do you drive, what's been your experience in driving change while working from home? What are some of the tips that you could share with some of the audience here?
Great question, Surina. I think you really got to take an effort. I think the first thing that you have to do as leaders in this difficult period is that we all have to take extra effort to connect. Now, it sounds easy. It sounds like it can be scheduled in your calendar, but actually it's more than that, right? We have more than 5,000 people who operate hospitals that are under a lot of pressure because of COVID. Now, how do I motivate them across state boundaries, and making sure that I know what they're going through and I can hear and listen to all the problems that they face and empathize at the same time? Yes, we could schedule a Teams call or a Zoom call, but what I do also with my team is also send them short messages with me talking on video, maybe less than 1 minute, just to say hello, and also to tell them that I'm here for them. I listen to the issues that's coming through my way. And also making a point for me to close the week by saying hello to them and ensuring that I try to solve as many of their problems as possible. So, for example, some of them are facing difficulty whilst they're working hard in the hospital. Their children are not getting access to computers for school, for example. So that's something that we've addressed through our computer program internally, where we're refurbishing a lot of the units in the company to be given out to people who are deserving within the organization that needs these computers for accessibility to education. So my job is really to make them happy about what they're doing and motivate them, because it's not easy doing their job. And I keep telling my leaders in the company that we've got it a lot easier because we don't have to wear the PPEs and actually have to deal with the issues that they have to deal with. So the biggest part of us in supporting them is really to ensure that we encourage, motivate, and provide them a lot of support in that process. So it is something that we must take an effort. And sometimes as simple as making a phone call and making sure that I call my regional heads and making sure that, are you okay? Are you having any problems? Do I need to talk to anyone in the government? Do I need to do anything that gets you going a lot faster? And of course, as and when we could actually travel, I do pay them a visit and make sure that they're motivated that way. So I think that's very important. Secondly, keep your messaging very, very authentic. I think corporate messaging tends to be a lot more corporate, right? The words we use, the emotions we use, the people that provide that narrative sometimes are looking at it from a corporate perspective. I think it's time for us as large organizations to be a lot more human, i.e. Being less corporate and also saying things that you really want to say so that people understand it, right? And I think that's something that we have to train. I talk to my leaders every day about it, and they say, well, boss, we got to have we need a dialogue or process to to be more human or more natural. And I found that really bizarre, but actually it's true. We're so ingrained in a process-oriented approach in communicating, right, that we forget that we're just human beings, talking to other people and just saying, hey, hello, right? And I think COVID has taught us that rank means nothing if you can't contribute to other people. And I want to stress this is so important within the organization. It doesn't mean anything to have a rank when you don't help other people do their jobs or make them feel more important when they're delivering their service to the customers. And I think it's so important that we approach authentic communication that way. And then lastly, I think it's important to recognize people and recognize them in small ways, in big ways. Sending an email, telling them that we appreciate what they do. And I've got like 20 WhatsApp chat groups where when I see something that I like, or I want to congratulate some people, I can do that directly. And people like the fact that, if you're a cleaning operator, that the CEO can also give you a kudos, thumbs up, clap, or whatever emoji that can come by to give them a sense that, look, I really appreciate what you do. And I think that's important. And we need to sort of huddle that way a lot more. So I think, yeah, the effort that we take really has to be a lot more humanized, Surina. And I think that's really where the culture starts to evolve. Or at least they appreciate the things that the company is doing, or at least they can give feedback to the company and say, look, you need to change. And we then have to steer our way to adopt some of those things.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think sometimes, whenever we talk about tech, digital, 4IR, AI, block, all these things, you start to think, you get really entrapped into the tech per se. But I think that sustainability of organizations really rely on organizations being empathetic. So there's empathy in understanding the people, understanding the customers. I think that goes a long way. So thanks for sharing that. So I want to come back to the business. You mentioned just now in the early days, it was all about getting the assets on you've got assets on the cloud, and then building out of this marketplace, and then looking at procurement and whatnot. But you also, that I think also evolved into Edgenta Next. You made a really notable announcement a couple of weeks ago about Edgenta Next. And so tell us a little bit more about that, and how are you thinking about, what does this mean? And is this the future of Edgenta?
So Edgenta Next is really an idea that we developed as a team to sort of say, well, we've got all this business, right? And the world is changing. So how do we grow our business in international markets when Edgenta doesn't have a local presence? A lot of our business is locally driven, right? So do we buy companies? Do we partner with companies? So when I came in and I talked to the team, I said, look, why don't we focus on the tech side? Because we built all this information, we built some of the tech, maybe not all of it, and let a new group of people figure out how to disrupt our own business, because we've got contracts in hand, and maybe these new people could tell us also that we could deliver some of these existing contracts in a different way. So what we've done is we sort of mashed up commercialization and the value proposition, looking at, hey, look, how can we deliver better services to our clients? And as long as I can remember looking at technology, whether it's in B school or whether in my own corporate experience, there's always room for cheaper, better, faster, nicer, and for us, the first sort of genesis was Edgenta Next was supposed to disrupt our own business. And how would we do it? What would be the considerations that we need to take into account, right? And that would be the sort of gelling point, because I didn't want to be divisive about it. I didn't want a new group of people to say, well, I'm different from the rest of you. No, I wanted everyone to be part of this. So what we did was we said, look, Edgenta Next is about Edgenta of the future. And it's going to take this journey about, look, all the pillars that we have in the business, they can look at it in a different way. So today, for example, I've got maybe 100 processes that drives different types of business. So I keep telling Edgenta Next, well, you don't need those processes. What can you do to do it in 5? What can you do to make sure the clients get all this stuff quickly? How can we deliver this value, right? So for example, we created a B2B platform for clinics. And I told them, look, just give it out to all the clinics and make sure that they can use it and make sure that the doctors see value in it, make sure the customers can actually access their doctors, whether remotely or physically. We add on a lot of other infrastructures within that whole supply chain of medicine. And the idea is to connect the doctors with the patients. So that's sort of the primary healthcare connectivity that we wanted to create. We ourselves are not going to be the clinics, but we want to make sure that the society in the future that develops smart cities, and I was just listening into the previous session on future smart cities, healthcare is going to be a big part of this. Right. And one of the things that I wanted to chase under Edgenta Next is the proliferation of the internet hospitals, which is now coming up in a great way in China. It's also coming up in Singapore, where incumbent hospitals are looking at internet services from healthcare to health services, but also internet pure plays are also looking into how they can become healthcare service providers. And what we are looking now is that we've got this sort of fragmented supply chain now being grouped together, right? But what we have to forget in Malaysia is stop getting fixated about having one solution. I think we need to figure out how to get everybody into play, right? And then evolve, adapt, and then go on from there. And I keep telling people in my own organization, like the new generation will sort it out. I think we don't give enough credit to the young talent we have in this country. They will sort it out, because guys like us or people like us are maybe in their minds a bit antiquated, the way we're thinking. And so what we do with the Edgenta Next is to give them that platform. Look, here's a problem that we have. How would you fix it? And then why would we do it differently? So what they've done is they've also invited other startups. So if you look at the Edgenta Next website, we've got companies like Biogenes who are developing affordable testing and diagnostics for diseases. We've got another company, Medical Opinion Asia, that also creates value proposition between doctors and patients. We got WeHealth that looks into wellness. So we're going to add more of these guys to our current QuickMed and sort of say, well, how do we connect all these guys and give Malaysians or people who want to connect to Edgenta Next a more meaningful experience in healthcare? Now, the end goal is very, very clear to me. The end goal is to provide affordable healthcare at the lowest possible cost and delivering the highest possible technology and value, right? And this is completely disruptive, because this is what Ping Ans of the world are doing. We really have to achieve some sort of semblance, because not everybody's insured by insurance, right? And I think what we want to do is give the citizens the ability to access all of this in a simple and understandable way. So I think that's really what Edgenta Next is supposed to do. Then, of course, the other stuff like infra and engineering, they already got some of the software that they're using. All I'm telling them to do is, look, blow it up into the cloud, invite your customers to have a look at some of the things that you're going to do, and then they can start evolving your projects and engineering capabilities through feedback with the data that we're collecting for them. So we've got separate rooms for each client. We've got separate real-time dashboards for them. So we basically manage the service levels that way. So the other big part of it is Edgenta Next is having to train all my engineers to be data scientists. Surina, can you imagine how difficult that is? Engineers have to learn how to be data scientists, because you got to figure out how to look at all this information, right? Because a lot of their work now is not just at the field, but also in front of a computer. They're gonna look at all this and say, well, okay, I gotta make certain decisions. I gotta sign this off. I gotta send this to the client, right? And that's not so easy. So they used to think, okay, data team, you guys look at the data and come back to me. Now, no, data team saying, well, look, you're the engineer. You gotta sign this off. So you gotta look at all this information and tell me whether this is okay or not. So yeah.
Yeah. So a couple of things I picked up there. So you mentioned disrupting the business. I think, and you also talked about co-creation. You talked about making sure that you're clear in terms of what the end game is. I think that what that all sounds to me is making sure that that there's a different mindset in terms of the approach, the mindset of it's okay to try something new, so long as we're all clear in terms of what the end game actually is. We must disrupt, we must co-create. You touched on data just now. But also, when you think about mindset, data, it all requires a different kind of training and rethinking, which reminds me, I was on a panel a couple of months ago with Petronas, and Petronas also going through some similar things, i.e., really pushing the boundary in terms of adopting new technologies, and they're doing quite a number of things as far as training is concerned. And then I remember Taufik made the claim, "Oh, we're training 80% of our people," and going through all sorts of different training. And so talk to me a little bit about your approach as far as human capital development is concerned. You said training, get your engineers to be data scientists, but not everybody is designed to be a data scientist. So what else is happening as far as training is concerned?
Thanks, Surina. Well, we've got an academy called Edgenta Academy, and we just recently launched something that, to me, cuts across the different diverse backgrounds of our people, and we call it our idea bank. And this is an online platform where anyone in the organization can group together or individually look at all sorts of ideas that will help improve the business. It's been awesome and amazing. And what has happened is that like recently, in a couple of weeks, I saw 3 engineers from Opus develop an app using tools that we provide on the idea bank to help them do work for certification and verification on the site using a mobile app, which is something that actually has been a problem for us in the last 18 months because we never had the opportunity to go to site due to COVID, right? But what's important here is the fact that these new, tools give people the freedom to participate and to also contribute. And I think that's been the big difference for us. This idea bank has generated more than 1,000 ideas. And then what we're doing right now is through a Shark Tank process, we're sort of filtering through what we can develop further, what we could support through tools, and allow these people the flexibility to continue to evolve them through our budgeting process so that they can actually continue with the ideation. And this is something that we must encourage. So the new form of training involves people doing it while they learn something new. I can't express how important this is, as opposed to just listening in front of a screen and making sure that people absorb as much as possible, which is not possible actually. But if they're actually involved or actively participating, and then they learn more through that process. So we've got this idea bank, and it's giving us offshoots on a few different things. AI components, IoT components through devices. We're also looking in data components. So from that, the offshoot is that the academy will start building content and training programs with different parties to actually help go deeper. So for example, a group of people send me a WhatsApp and say, "Boss, we need to learn how to do Python programming." And I said, "Why?" Because we want to develop the stuff, blah, blah, blah. And so they, so the fact that they could tell me a story was enough for me to say, "Okay, go do it. Go do it now," right? So what we need to do as leaders in organization is to really not be in the way of progress by trying to say what's good and what's not good. What we should be doing is allowing a very structured way for people to contribute. And then from there, learn through the data that they're providing to you to say, okay, maybe these are the things that we should be doing for our people so that their digital journey can be facilitated. They learn new things along the way and the organization grows. So we need to grow the organization in ripples rather than, in block ways, like, oh, okay, tomorrow we have to go through 3 weeks of digital program and everybody is going to be a data scientist when they graduate these 3 weeks, and it doesn't work. So we've got to actually break it down in smaller pieces and allow that ripple effect to really permeate the organization whilst we continue to influence them through our new culture first. That's really how we look at it. In bite-sized chunks. And it's been great because even the cleaning operatives are learning how to participate on how we could do things better at hospitals, for example, because they're the ones cleaning the hospitals and making sure that all the assets are maintained. And so we need their feedback. Before this, we couldn't get their feedback. The supervisors or facility manager will summarize what they think is good as opposed to getting feedback from the ground. So
I'm curious to get your thoughts, because you touched there. So clearly in the topic of change, there's a lot of different stakeholders. We covered the employees, the next generation, but there are also other stakeholders that I'm sure you've had to deal with. Your board, for example, other stakeholders that are a little bit more conservative. So this is something that will all, as we continue to push the boundaries of technology, because technology at the end of the day is all about change. What are some tips that what are some of the experience that you've had, and some tips that you might share with others that are listening in, as far as like being able to navigate challenging stakeholders?
Well, I'll speak generally about stakeholders, because I think every stakeholder has an objective they want to achieve, right? So in a listed company like ours, more than 80% of our stakeholders are independent directors. So as independent directors, you want to make sure the organization is built in a way that is sustainable. It's built around culture and processes, and it's built to deliver profitability in a sustainable way, and people know where that profit comes from. So when we talk about technology, obviously the job of the CEO and the management team is really to help make sure that technology has a path to profitability, which is not necessarily there all the time. And so what I've been doing, and I think this is, I guess it depends on your comfort level, but for me, being honest about where we are is always the starting point of ensuring that you get the right feedback from your board. You must be very clear about where you are and what you want to do, even though that path to profit is going to be a lot longer, or maybe it's not even there. But what's important is, why are we doing it? What are we trying to achieve, right? Because there's some things we do now does not have an impact in the 3 to 5 years, but it may have an impact well beyond that. And I think that's a group of activities that must be communicated well. Second is that I think I wouldn't want to overemphasize what's the importance of having the engagement with each and every one of your stakeholders in a more intimate setting. I think everybody needs to learn in their own special way, and I spend a lot of time engaging with my stakeholders, different types, whether it's government, non-government, corporates. Everybody wants to have a say, and sometimes at board meetings, not all says are able to be incorporated. So my job is also to make sure some of these points are also aired out, and we can have a healthy debate at the board level, for example, so that everybody's interest is taken care of. What's more important in these engagement sessions is to harness data. Everybody's got experience in data, information that they want to share. But how do we solve problems from there? It's always, I treat the board as a sounding board for me to solve problems, because, it's like, rather than they expect me to figure out all the sort of problem solving, I also want to use the opportunity to share with them, look, I've got this problem right now, and I've got these data points. It'd be great if you can also add to your experience, see how we can solve this. And then, and that makes a lot of sense in board meetings as opposed to going paper by paper, right? Which is already a very, very tedious exercise. The last point I want to just talk about is that we also need to encourage our stakeholders to be well trained, giving them input in terms of the type of things that they should be looking at, perspectives, right, in terms of what the world is doing. And I think we need to do this together with the management team. Otherwise, there will be pockets of the organization that is a lot more informed than others, and then it's difficult to have a common discussion around topics like tech. And you know what? Tech has been a topic that everybody is so scared to implement and talk about, but then they love the stories of success that comes out of it if it's successful. But all the in-between stuff, the problems, the challenges, it doesn't work, everybody's too scared to deal with it. So for me, that part is the most important part. How do we take all that middle part that is sort of iffy, and I'm not sure, I don't have any strong answers, but you must trust the process, you must trust the new generation, you must trust some of the tech, and then let everybody have an honest view of the situation. And then my job is to encourage them to make those decisions. And so that we have a risk matrix that allows them to see, look, it's not a big risk that they think they're taking. And so it's always about perspective, Surina, and I think you know this best, because you're in MDEC, you have to always manage these options and perspectives. And I think it's always important that we provide those data points to the board or to the shareholders or the stakeholders at large.
Certainly, most certainly. So there's certainly a lot of things happening in the region. Healthcare is one of these areas where we're expected to see a lot of growth in there. We ourselves on the MDEC side, we're doing quite a number of things to encourage data share in healthcare, encouraging a lot of the startups that are in the space to nurture, because it's a huge opportunity and it's ripe for disruption. We're also seeing a lot of interest and activity in the region today. The internet economy in Southeast Asia is expected to grow 3 times over the next couple of years. So for you, Nizam, like, what are you personally most excited about?
Look, I'm really excited by the fact that, you know, in the last 18 months, we've got a group of people in Malaysia who are so tech savvy. They know what they want, but they're not finding it enough in things that we do here in Malaysia, whether at corporate level or whether at facilitation level or agency level at the government. So I know everybody's trying to do their best, but we need to find a way to accelerate that, because just to give you a sense, right? If you look at healthcare and CAGRs, right? I mean, I've just been looking at all these CAGRs, and I'm telling my team, our EOTF 25 was based on a 12% CAGR. Healthcare CAGRs around, you know, things like telemedicine is at 17%. It's not so high, but if you look at things like intercepting diseases, long-range diagnostic, it's like 28%. Right, and you go to digital pharmacies now, which is the big thing. Everybody wants access to all sorts of different medicine. That's like 40% CAGR, right? So growth in this market is really driven by investor sort of confidence and investor interest, but more importantly, the right set of people with the right set of tech to tell the right set of stories. And I think we should be playing this game or being part of it in a more active way. So I've told my team, look, let's embrace as many companies as possible in Malaysia that is relevant to us. And maybe even if it's not relevant, how can we help them with the infrastructure that we have? So I think I'm excited by the growth prospects. I do think that we need to do a lot more in adopting not just companies, co-creation, but also in just driving you know, our ambition towards getting our entire country more tech savvy, tech enabled. You know, it's an ongoing journey. I know there's a lot of frustration in this subject matter, but look, we can't give up. We can't give up, and we just got to continue the journey, and we just have to do what we need to do. And I think that's really the message I'm telling my colleagues in the industry. I'm telling them the same thing within the company, that you know, for some things that we don't need to create, we partner. For some things that we think we have the ability to create, well, let's do it. Right. And I think, you know, part of it is that a lot of people keep telling me that they need to ask permission, and I'm not entirely sure who they're asking permission from. But, you know, if you look at the last 18 months, adaptation drove a lot of innovation, whether it was by permission, whether it didn't happen by permission, people just did things because they needed to survive. And I think, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Surina.
So it sounds like you're saying we don't need permission to dance and just create all these things.
I mean, okay, you tell me, how is it that 100 million people went to an online concert with Ariana Grande, and all these kids are asking me whether I can buy them a wrap? And I'm saying, what concert? What Fortnite? What? So you know, the world that we live in is hyper scale, right? Hyper everything. So if we don't take that perspective now, we're gonna sort of be left behind, right? And so I was just joking with my buddies a couple of days ago that look, you know, our children are basically telling us how we're supposed to be thinking about tech, and the way they want to think about tech, because marketing, product development is a function of how fast you can put it out there. Otherwise, you know, it'll just be yesterday's news, and tomorrow they'll be on to something else, right? So I think, you know, if I look at it, Rihanna has a bigger market cap than Edgenta. Go figure. $1.7 billion US. She's the richest entertainer, and my market cap is 1.6 billion ringgit. You know, so I think, you know, I need to sort of, well, I mean, maybe not to entertainment, but we just have to move our way towards that sort of economy in a lot of our businesses.
Well, I think, you know, one of the real refreshing things whenever I have conversations with you is this mindset of positivity. I think at the end of the day, you know, especially as it relates to technology, there's opportunities that can be reaped. Risk will always be there, so we will need to manage the risk along the way. But this whole mindset of positively embracing, taking the courage to do something new, engaging with all the different stakeholders, coming up with different ideas, I think that's really the way to go. Certainly that's one of the takeaways that I take away from our conversation today.
Definitely, Surina, and I want to congratulate you and MDEC for facilitating this whole process for us. I think the country still needs to have a digital agency to help guide some of the thought process. There's going to be a lot of frustration along the way. Look, this whole process has been going up and down for many, many years, right? The difference is the people. The people always makes the difference. So hopefully, the people today and in the future with MDEC and also in companies like Edgenta can evolve with what is required, as opposed to thinking, a lot of the things that we did in the 90s and try to implement things, in the current context. So yeah, I think we all need to come together to support this initiative as a country.
So thank you so much, Nizam, for your time. I'm sure our viewers today took a lot from that. I took rigorous notes as I was talking along. I'm sure this will be many, many conversations that MDEC and the industry will continue to engage with UEM. And we wish all the best, and we'll keep following you, all right?
Thank you, Surina. Thanks a lot for inviting me. Thank you, MDEC. Thanks for everything. See you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Puan Surina and Syahrunizam, for that great and fascinating discussion along the lines of digital adoption in the healthcare industry, the impact, the implications of COVID-19, and the technological, organizations, and not forgetting the human or cultural standpoints. Thank you and stay safe. To all our other MTM 2021 attendees, we shall now take a break and resume later on at 2:30 p.m. See you then.